He is sorting clothes. It is October 1942. A 19-year-old boy named Samuel Willenberg is standing in a yard surrounded by wire. Around him, mountains of coats, dresses, shoes taken from people who are already dead. He reaches into the pile. His hands find a small brown coat. He knows this coat. His mother sewed strips of green cloth into the sleeves to make them longer as his little sister Tamara grew. Tamara was 5 years old. She had arrived on the same train as Samuel 3 weeks earlier from the town of Opatu. 6,000 people came on that train. By the time Samuel found that coat, every one of them was dead. Samuel held his little sister's coat in his hands, and he did not cry. He had already learned not to cry. You are about to hear what happened in this forest. From the men who were made to stay alive inside it, and who chose to remember. Treblinka was not a concentration camp. There were no barracks with bunks, no tattooing of numbers, no selection for labor. As Holocaust historian Yehuda Bauer has observed, places like this were, in his words, factories whose end product was dead human beings. Treblinka was the purest expression of that idea the war produced. It was built in a matter of weeks in the spring and early summer of 1942. It opened on July 23, 1942. It was designed for one purpose only, to kill every person who arrived there as fast as mechanically possible. Between July 1942 and the spring of 1943, trains came from the Warsaw ghetto, from Radom, from Białystok, from Theresienstadt, from as far as Thrace and Macedonia. In the first 6 weeks of operation alone, the camp's own gas chambers broke down repeatedly under the weight of the killing. The bodies were piling up faster than the ground could hold them. The first commandant, SS Obersturmführer Irmfried Eberl, was sacked in August 1942, not for the murder, but for the disorder. His replacement, SS Hauptsturmführer Franz Stangl, had run the Sobibor camp. Stangl restored order. He expanded the gas chambers. He accelerated the trains. By the time it was over, between 800,000 and 900,000 people had been murdered here, almost all of them Jewish. That estimate is still debated. The real number may be higher. 3 men survived who left written testimony of what they saw inside. Jankiel Wiernik was a carpenter from Warsaw. Samuel Willenberg was a 19-year-old from Opatu. Richard Glazar was a young Czech Jew from Prague, deported from Theresienstadt. This is what they witnessed. And there is one more name, a man who did not survive, but who walked to his death in a way that no one who saw it ever forgot. His name was Janusz Korczak. His fate is the heart of what this place was. The trains arrived at the Treblinka village station, 4 kilometers from the camp. They came in sections 20 freight cars at a time, pulled by a small locomotive into the camp itself. On the platform, German and Ukrainian guards were waiting. Station master Franciszek Sebecki, a Pole who worked the Treblinka railway line, watched the transports arrive throughout the summer of 1942. He later described the sound as something he could not put into a category he already knew. Packed inside sealed freight cars in summer heat, the people had been traveling for days. Some were already dead before the doors opened. What met the living was carefully designed. Signs on the platform said, Treblinka Transit Camp. Guards announced that everyone would shower and then continue to work camps in Ukraine. Jankiel Wiernik arrived on August 23, 1942. He would later write that the people around him believed they were going to a transit station, that the worst, they thought, was already behind them. It was not behind them. It was 80 meters ahead. The Germans called it the Schlauch, the tube. The prisoners called it the Himmelweg, the road to heaven. It was a camouflaged passage, roughly 80 to 90 meters long, fenced with barbed wire on both sides, planted with small trees to conceal what it led to. At its end stood a white building. A Star of David was painted on its wall. Above its door, a sign, Zur Badianstalt, to the showers. Inside were the gas chambers. Men were separated from women and children on the platform. Both groups were driven into separate undressing barracks. The women had their heads shaved. Gold teeth were checked by Jewish prisoner workers under guard. Valuables were taken to a booth the prisoners called the cashier. From the start, 3 gas chambers operated at Treblinka, each roughly 4 by 4 meters, built to hold hundreds of people. By early autumn 1942, Stangl had supervised the construction of a second, larger building. 10 additional chambers, each one 7 by 7 meters large enough, according to Wiernik, to hold 1,000 people at once. The gas was carbon monoxide, pumped in from a diesel engine installed outside the building. Chil Rachman, another survivor, described the moment of entry. He wrote that at the steps stood a German who pointed to the entrance and smiled. Inside, there were no showers. There had never been any showers. The doors sealed. Wiernik later described what happened to the workers outside. They heard the engine start, and then silence. And then they moved on to the next transport. He wrote that he found himself unable to look at the building, but that looking away was also impossible. Within 15 to 20 minutes, everyone inside was dead. From the moment the train arrived to the moment the last person in it was dead, the entire process, on a functioning day, took less than 2 hours. Between 10,000 and 12,000 people were killed here on the busiest days of August 1942. That number was not an accident. It was a target. By the summer of 1942, Janusz Korczak was 63 years old. He had been a pediatrician, a writer, a radio broadcaster, one of the most recognized voices in Polish public life before the war. His orphanage on Siena Street in the Warsaw ghetto held nearly 200 children. He had been offered false papers and escape routes by his Christian Polish friends multiple times. He turned them down every time. In the final entry of his ghetto diary, he wrote, and these are his words, "It is a difficult thing to be born and learn to live. Ahead of me is a much easier task, to die." On August 5, 1942, the Germans arrived at the orphanage. What happened next has been described by eyewitnesses who watched from the street. Korczak organized the children into rows. Some accounts say he told them they were going on a picnic to the country. The children were dressed in their best clothes. Some carried their favorite toys. Korczak walked at the front of the column. Stefania Wilczyska, his lifelong colleague, walked beside him. The orphanage flag was carried by a child at the head of the procession, one side bearing King Matthias, a character from one of Korczak's own books, the other side bearing the Star of David. Witnesses on the street described a silence among the column, a terrible orderliness. Ladislaw Spielmann, the pianist who would later write The Pianist, saw them pass. He could not speak about it for years. They were loaded onto the train at the Umschlagplatz. At the Treblinka Memorial today, among 17,000 symbolic stones representing communities destroyed in this camp, only one bears the name of an individual. It reads, Janusz Korczak and the children. And the children. Samuel Willenberg survived the first hours at Treblinka because a familiar face in the crowd of slave laborers told him to claim a trade. He said he was a bricklayer. His father was a painter, and he was wearing his father's paint-stained apron. An SS officer believed him. The rest of his transport, all 3 sections, all 6,000 people from Opatwu, walked the Schlauch and died. At any given time, roughly 700 to 1,000 Jewish prisoners were kept alive at Treblinka. They were called the Sonderkommando, the Special Detachment. They sorted the possessions of the dead. They cleaned the freight cars after each transport. They pulled the bodies from the gas chambers. They filled the mass graves. They were told nothing about how long they would be permitted to live. Richard Glazar arrived at Treblinka in October 1942, deported from Theresienstadt. He later wrote that existing in the camp required a particular kind of internal dissociation, a splitting of the self that allowed the hands to do what the mind could not process. He described it precisely. You're not alive anymore, but you can't die. Every few weeks, without warning or pattern, the Germans would reduce the size of the labor pool. Prisoners who had grown too thin, too slow, too visibly broken were taken to a structure on the eastern edge of the camp. The camp staff called it the lazaret. It was disguised as a hospital, with a Red Cross flag above its entrance. Inside was a pit. SS Unterscharfer Willy Mentz operated it. His prisoners called him the Doctor of Treblinka. He shot those brought to him in the back of the head. Their bodies were burned in the pit below. Willenberg would sort clothing for months. One day in late 1942, he reached into a pile and pulled out a small brown coat with green strips sewn into the sleeves. He knew the coat. His mother had lengthened the sleeves for his youngest sister Tamara as she grew. Clinging to it was a skirt that had belonged to his older sister Ita. He later wrote that the two garments were pressed together as if, he said, in a sister's embrace. He put the clothes back in the pile. He kept walking. By early 1943, something was shifting inside the camp. The mass deportations were slowing. In the spring, prisoner work details were ordered to do something new. They were given iron grates built from railway rails. They were ordered to dig up the mass graves. Since the autumn of 1942, the SS command had been aware of a catastrophic problem. The bodies of the hundreds of thousands buried in Treblinka's pits were decomposing, and evidence was spreading into the surrounding soil, the air, the water table. The order came from SS Brigadeführer Odilo Globotnik. The bodies had to be burned. The Sonderkommando were ordered to exhume them, load them onto the grates, and incinerate them. This is the moment the script changes. Until now, the question has been, what happened here and how? But the burning of the graves reveals a different question. The SS wasn't destroying evidence to hide a crime. They destroyed evidence because they believed they were going to win. They expected to control this territory permanently. The burning was not panic, it was procedure. It was the cold execution of a long-term plan. Jankiel Wiernik watched the exhumations from within the camp. He was a carpenter, and he had been forced to help build the second gas chamber building with his own hands. He had carried the lumber. He had installed the doors. He had known what the building was for as he built it. That knowledge had not destroyed him. And that raises the hardest question any of these survivors force us to hold. Not, how did the killers do it? But, how do human beings survive witnessing the destruction of everything around them and choose, somehow, to stay human? It is the spring of 1943, and the prisoners are dying faster than they can be replaced. Fewer transports are arriving. Every prisoner in the camp understands what this means. When the killing stops, there will be no reason to keep them alive. A resistance organization has been forming in secret since early 1943. Its leader is Marceli Galuski, a Jewish engineer who has been given the role of Jewish camp elder by the SS and who has used that access carefully. The organizers include Dr. Julian Korczak, a Polish army captain, and Zelomir Bloch, a lieutenant of the Czechoslovak army. There is a weapons arsenal in the German quarters. A Jewish locksmith named Eugeniusz Turowski finds a broken lock. He makes a duplicate key. He gives one copy to Galuski. He says nothing. For months, plans are made and abandoned. Transports arrive unexpectedly and disrupt the schedule. Dr. Korczak is discovered with cash intended for bribing a guard to obtain weapons. He swallows poison before they can interrogate him. The plan dies with him and is rebuilt. August 2nd, 1943 is a Monday. There are no transports on Mondays. The guards are relaxed. Before 4 in the afternoon, young prisoners who serve as orderlies for the SS boys carry weapons out of the arsenal in buckets and beneath clothing. Rifles, grenades, most prisoners are armed with axes, crowbars, and homemade incendiary bottles. The signal is given. The camp begins to burn. The wooden barracks catch first. The prisoner work buildings follow. The gas chamber building, the one Jankiel Wiernik built with his own hands, does not burn. It is brick. It stands. Prisoners rush the main gate. The guard towers open with machine guns. Men fall into the barbed wire. Others climb over them and run into the forest. Samuel Willenberg is shot in the leg at the wire. He keeps running. He does not stop for the friends who fall beside him. He runs into the trees. Of the roughly 850 prisoners in the camp at the time of the uprising, around 300 managed to break out. Most were killed in the minefields surrounding the perimeter or hunted down in the forests by German and Ukrainian pursuit units in the following days. Some were captured by local Polish villagers and returned to the Germans. Richard Glazar escaped into the forest with a group of prisoners. He spent the rest of the war in hiding, moving through Czechoslovakia and Germany under a false identity. He wrote his testimony decades later. Jankiel Wiernik reached Warsaw and joined the underground. While in hiding, he wrote his account A Year in Treblinka from memory in a single sustained sitting. It was smuggled out of occupied Poland in 1944, published in London and New York in Yiddish and English. Samuel Willenberg survived the war in Warsaw. He joined the Polish underground resistance. He never spoke publicly about Treblinka for decades. He took up sculpture in his later years, bronze figures of Treblinka's prisoners, women, children, the men at the wire. He said he could not stop seeing them. After the war, approximately 90 people from the uprising were confirmed to have survived long enough to see liberation. The total number of people known to have survived Treblinka across its entire operation is now estimated at around 67, though recent research by the Shoah Foundation suggests the true number may be higher, perhaps 238 or more. But the question is not how many survived. The question is what it meant to survive it. The Germans dismantled Treblinka in the autumn of 1943. They destroyed the wooden structures. They plowed the earth. They planted lupines and pine trees over the graves. They installed a Ukrainian farmer on the site. They intended that no one would ever know what had been here. What they could not remove were the testimonies already written, already smuggled, already printed in New York and London while the camp still operated. The historical estimate of those killed at Treblinka stands between 800,000 and 900,000 people. The Yad Vashem figure is 875,000. Some recent scholarship suggests the number may reach 925,000. The exact count will never be known. The SS burned their own records before retreating. Between late July and September 5, 1942 alone, in 6 weeks, 265,000 Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto were killed here. That is a city the size of Birmingham, England, or Orlando, Florida, killed in 6 weeks. Treblinka received Jews from Warsaw, Radom, Białystok, Lublin, Theresienstadt, Yugoslavia, Greece, Macedonia, Thrace, Slovakia. Over 2,000 Roma and Sinti were also murdered here. Franz Stangl was arrested in 1967 in Brazil, where he had lived under his own name for years. He was extradited to West Germany, tried, and sentenced to life imprisonment in 1970. He died in prison the following year. Kurt Franz, his deputy, was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1965. He was released on grounds of ill health in 1993. He died in 1998. No one was ever executed for what happened at Treblinka. Samuel Willenberg returned to the Treblinka site for the 71st anniversary in 2013. He walked through the clearing in his beret and medals. He stopped and pointed. The platform was here. He pointed again. The trains stopped here. Nothing remains above ground. There is no building. There are only the stones and the trees and the man who knows where everything was. Richard Glazar died by suicide in Prague in 1997. His memoir, Trap with a Green Fence, is considered one of the most precise accounts of camp life from the inside ever written. Jankiel Wiernik testified at the Eichmann trial in Jerusalem in 1961. He returned to Poland in 1964 for the opening of the Treblinka Memorial. He died in Israel in 1972. Samuel Willenberg became the last surviving eyewitness of the Treblinka uprising. He died in Tel Aviv on February 19, 2016. He was 93 years old. After the war, he was asked repeatedly how he had survived not physically, but internally. He never had a simple answer. He said that sculpting helped. He said that speaking helped. He said that the faces of the people in the camp never left him, and that he had decided, somewhere in the forest outside Treblinka on August 2, 1943, that the only thing he could do for them was to not let anyone forget that those faces had existed. In the sorting yard at Treblinka, in the autumn of 1942, Samuel Willenberg held his little sister's coat in his hands. He stood inside a camp that no longer exists. He was surrounded by the possessions of people who had arrived alive that morning. He put the coat back in the pile. He kept walking. Jankiel Wiernik, from his testimony, and these are his exact words, said, "I have no words to describe it." He wrote anyway. Samuel Willenberg sculpted what he could not say. Richard Glazar named his memoir after something a condemned man might notice on the road to his death: the color of the fence he walked past. Green. The forest is still. It does not give anything back. The stones remember what the ground was told to forget. These testimonies exist because a handful of people survived impossible odds to leave them. If you believe this story deserves to be heard, share it. The algorithm that decides who sees this documentary is indifferent to what happened here. The people who subscribe to this channel are not. If you are new here, this is the kind of history we make. The kind that does not look away.